Hi, I'm Lucy from Sew Essential, and today we're taking a closer look at the Janome Atelier 6, just one of a wide range of sewing machines and overlockers available to buy on our site sewessential.co.uk. At Sew Essential, we pride ourselves on using our expert knowledge to help you find the perfect machine for you, and that's why I've made this video, but we're also always here to support you by phone or email too. Due to the incredible popularity of the Atelier range, Janome recently relaunched a special 10-year anniversary edition, which includes the Atelier 3, 5, 6, 7 and 9, and we stock the full range on our website. They all come with some lovely anniversary edition gifts as standard, which includes an extra large extension table, a lovely bobbin storage case, some fabric clips, some scissors, a pin cushion. The Atelier range are the first in the Janome range to go up to what we call the long arm model. So this gives you extra space under the arm. There's 210 millimeters to the right of the needle. And just to put that into context for you, on a lot of sewing machines, you get about 170. So having that extra space just makes it so easy to work on those larger projects like quilts or curtains or coats. With the Atelier 5 upwards, you'll also receive a walking foot. It's a standard walking foot with the Atelier 5, but with the 6 and the 7, you receive the Acufeed system, which is superior to a standard walking foot. It actually links in with the feed dogs on the machine and gives you a superior feed. And it can also be switched out so that you can use different types of presser feet and benefit from that Acufeed system. And I'll show you more about that later in the video. Other standout features include a whopping 196 different stitches, 10 different styles of buttonhole, an alphabet for monogramming, a maximum stitch width of 9 millimeters. It's normally 7 millimeters on most sewing machines. The ability to elongate stitches, a twin needle button, the ability to program combinations of stitches, and the all-important scissor snips button, which you can also automate on this machine as well. Plus you get the excellent lighting both under the arm and around the needle. You get the easy change needle plate, and when you purchase the machine from us, not only do you get the standard needle plate, you also get a straight stitch needle plate included as well. Plus 11 different feet, lots of accessories and all the other features you would expect for a machine of this calibre. I'll pop a link in the corner of the screen so you can visit our website, take a closer look and purchase it there. Later in the video we'll have a look at what's in the box, but now let's get started by taking a closer look at what this brilliant machine can do for you. Now I'm going to start by threading the machine. We'll wind the bobbin first, but I just want to point out here the excellent build quality of these machines. So the thread is housed in a cutout area on top of the machine here, which is lovely and secure. And then all of the paths that we pass the thread through are also incredibly secure. And I think that all just contributes to the excellent stitch quality that we get from these machines. So we'll take the thread through the relevant guides, which are numbered on top of the machine, and then bring it across to the right. Just pass the thread through one of the holes on top of the bobbin, and that slots on top of your bobbin winder. Just push it to the right, and then you can put your foot on the foot control or use the start stop button to start winding the bobbin. And then I'm just going to snip the excess thread and continue to wind. And on top of the machine here as well, I also want to point out the fact that it has automatic thread tension. So if you set that dial to auto, the machine will automatically set the thread tension depending on the stitch that you've chosen. You do have the option to override that. So if you're working with a particularly tricky fabric, you might want to increase or decrease your needle thread tension. You've got the option to do that. But for the vast majority of sewing, you'll find that that auto setting will be fine. And then you've also got your presser foot pressure adjustant here, so you can just turn that dial to increase or reduce the presser foot pressure. Again, if you're working with thicker or particularly lightweight fabrics, you might want the option to do that. To insert the bobbin, I've pressed the lock button on the machine again on the main screen, and then I just need to remove the bobbin case cover like so. And then you want the thread coming down the left hand side of your bobbin, drop your bobbin into the bobbin case, and then you just need to make sure that the thread comes through the opening at the front here. There's a notch or an opening there. Make sure the thread comes through that, then bring it around this guide, draw it up to the back of the bobbin case, and that will make sure that the thread goes through the correct groove on the bobbin case, and then just bring it around, draw it to the right, and it will snip the excess thread for you, and then you can just replace your bobbin case cover. To thread the needle, I'm going to first of all lift the presser foot to make sure that's up. That opens the tension discs so that the thread goes through the tension discs as we're threading. I'm then going to press the needle up down button, which brings my take up lever to the highest position. And then I'm going to press the lockout button, which is just a security measure on this machine, a safety measure for when you're threading the machine or changing accessories so that you can't accidentally start sewing. Then I'm going to take the thread through the guides on the top of the machine, the same as the bobbin winding initially, but then instead of going around there, we're going to come down the front of the machine here, underneath thread guide number 3, through the take-up lever from right to left, and then down the front of the machine. And then to finish threading the needle, we're going to use the fantastic needle threader on this machine. I absolutely love this needle threader. I just find it to be so reliable and so precise. It never lets me down. So we're going to take the thread first of all behind this thread guide, and then there's a second thread guide on the needle bar of the machine. So just bring the thread across to the left on that thread guide. And then you want to take the thread up to where it says number 7, between the black piece and the grey piece, over the top of the arrow there, and then you can just bring it round the thread cutter on the side of the machine. And then if we bring the needle threader down, you can see it swings around the front of the needle rather than going around the back, and it is just so foolproof. It just threads beautifully every time, and you don't get that annoying situation where sometimes a loop's created on the thread and you have to sort of get your fingers behind it to pull it through. It just seems to go through perfectly every time with this needle threader, and I absolutely love it. Once you've threaded the machine, it's time to choose which one of those gorgeous stitches you're going to sew. All of the stitches are displayed clearly inside the top of the machine, and they're organised into modes from 1 to 6. So to select the different modes, we just press this button here, and you can see we've currently got mode 1 selected. I can press it again for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and back to 1 again. Once you've selected the relevant mode, you simply type the number of the stitch that you would like to sew into the keypad. So I'm going to choose stitch number 88 from mode 1, which is a lovely satin stitch, and you can see that is displayed on the screen for me. It tells me which foot I need to use, and it tells me it's set the stitch width to 9mm and the stitch length to 0.4. I do have the option to adjust the stitch width and the stitch length if I want to, just using the plus and minus buttons underneath. So I can reduce that or increase that, for example. Now, I just want to point out here the difference. One of the key differences between the Atelier 6 and the 7 is that on the 7, the entire screen is a touch screen. So it's very much like an iPad or a mobile phone. And when I make those selections and I make those changes, the stitch is displayed on the left hand side of the screen, and when I reduce the width or increase the length, for example, it will actually change on the screen, so I can see what it's going to look like when it's stitched out. And there's also other options on there, so if that's something that you think you might be interested in, it's definitely worth taking a look at our Atelier 7 video as well, which is available on our website and also on our YouTube channel. Other buttons in this part of the menu are the auto thread snip option. So you have a scissor snips button on this machine that you can press to snip the threads when you finish sewing. But if you want to automate that process, you can press this button here. The scissors icon will appear on the screen so that you know that you've selected that option. And then when you use the target stitch to finish your seam, the machine will automatically snip the threads for you as well. It's just wonderful to have those sorts of options to be able to automate different parts of the sewing process and customise the machine to your preferences. If you no longer want to use that, just press it again and then you can use the standard scissor snips button at your discretion. You also have a menu here that allows you to scroll through the stitches. So sometimes you might want to compare stitches that are close to each other in the stitch chart, for example. So I can just press those arrows and I'm able to do that. Here we have options for the most commonly used stitches. So you've got your straight stitch, you've got your zigzag stitch, you've got your buttonhole stitch, for example, and that just means that you don't even have to choose a mode or type a number in. You can go straight to those most commonly used options. Here we have the elongation button. So if we select a satin stitch again, we've got the option to elongate that stitch, and I just press that button and go through the different options. So I can go from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'll show you more about that later in the video. I've also got the twin needle option on this machine. So if I press that button now, the machine is beeping at me because it's not possible to sew that stitch with a twin needle. And this is a great feature of this machine. On a lot of sewing machines, you would have to insert your twin needle and manually turn the hand wheel to check that the needle wasn't going to hit the presser foot. But on the Atelier, you've got the option to select that, and then you know the machine will only let you select stitches that can be sewn with the twin needle. So if I want to select the zigzag stitch, for example, if I now select the twin needle option, it's not beeping at me, it's selected the option and I can see the icon there, so I know that that stitch will work with a twin needle. Here we've got the mirror stitch option. If I press that, the icon's displayed and I know that it will sew a mirror version of that stitch. And again, just mentioning the Atelier 7 here, that's another way that the Atelier 7 will actually display that on the screen for you, so you can visualise the change in the stitch when you do the mirror image. But on this one, we get the icon so we know that we've selected that. There's also the settings option here. So this gives you options like stopping the noises, you know, the buzzing when you press the buttons, you can choose to not have that. You can choose to finish with the needle in the up position above the fabric when you finish sewing rather than down in the fabric. So again, lots of options to customise the machine and set your preferences and make it your own. Down here we have the memory key, so you're able to program combinations of stitches on this machine, multiple stitches in a set pattern that you want to repeat over and over again, and that's the button you use to do that. This is the button you use to clear it. And then in relation to that, we've got the start over button here, which when you have programmed a stitch combination into the machine, if you stop mid-stitch, it allows you to choose where you would like to pick up again. For example, whether you would like to pick up from the beginning of stitch 1, 2 or 3 in the combination. And finally, that's the lockout key. We can use this when we're doing things like changing accessories or threading the machine, and we just know that we're not going to accidentally start sewing with the machine once that option is selected. So let's go ahead and sew some basic stitches and have a look at some of these features on the machine. The first thing we need to do is lower the presser foot, and I just want to say that the lever for lowering and raising the presser foot on this machine is really substantial. It's much bigger than on other machines, and I really like that because it makes it so easy to find. You also have additional presser foot lift on this, so if I push that all the way up, you can see how easy it is for me to fit thicker, bulkier fabrics under there, and it's also easy to change out the needle plate as well when you use that option. To change the presser foot, just press the black button on the back of the ankle here and it will release the foot, and then use the lever to lower the needle bar and it will clip the foot back into place. So let's go ahead and just sew some simple stitches. I'm going to put this machine on the fastest speed, and to secure my stitches I'm going to just hold down the reverse button and the machine will sew backwards, and then I can let go of that and it sews forwards for me. If I don't want to double up my stitches, if I want a neater finish, I've got the option for the target stitch. So if I press this button, the machine sews a few stitches on the spot to secure that seam, and then I can press the scissor snips button after either of those options to snip the threads at the touch of a button, which is one of the favourite features on this machine that people have. And the fact that you can also automate that, how I showed you earlier in the video, so you don't even have to press that button, you just choose the target stitch and it will secure the stitches and snip the threads for you, is just brilliant. It's one of those things that once you've got used to it, you will never want to go back. You do have the option to take your fabric off and cut your threads on the side of the machine, but in all honesty, I don't think you're ever going to be using that when you've got these wonderful automation options. The sliding speed control's great for when you want real precision and accuracy, or if you're not particularly confident sewing something. You can control the speed with the foot control, but we've all been in the situation where we've tried to apply gentle pressure and then accidentally applied too much. The machine's run away with us and we've oversewn where we wanted to finish. Use the sliding speed control, put it on the slowest speed, and even if I put my foot all the way down on the foot control, it will only sew at the slowest speed. And I can also use that in conjunction with the start stop button. So if I don't want to use my foot control for any reason, I can unplug it and I can sew by using this button, and I can control the speed using the sliding speed control. So press it once to start sewing, once to stop sewing, and then if I increase the speed, it goes back up. The other thing that's great about this machine is you do get a knee lift with it as well, and that just fits into the front of the machine, and when you push it to the right with your leg, the foot will raise, and that means you're able to keep both hands on the fabric. So that's great when you're doing things like quilting or free motion embroidery, times when you want to keep both hands on the fabric and have more control, but you might want to lift the foot. That knee lift comes into its own. They're used in industry, and there's lots of people who really like to have that option. You'll notice the needles finishing in the down position. That's my preference because it's just great for things like pivoting round corners, but you do have the option to override that for the needles to finish in the up position. And you've also got your needle up down button here as well, so that you can lift it or lower it at any time. You know, again, precision and accuracy, you might want to nudge your way to the end of a seam to match it up perfectly. That can be a great way to do that. And I should also mention that you have got multiple needle positions on this machine as well, which is great for things like sewing piping or sewing a zip, where you want to place your stitches in exactly the right position. To do this, you just go into the straight stitch option, and then you use your stitch width plus and minus buttons to move the needle to the left or to the right. I thought it'd be nice to show you a buttonhole being stitched out on this machine, because you get the one-step buttonhole foot included, which you're probably familiar with, but when you purchase this machine from us you also get a buttonhole stabiliser plate included as well. And this is a really useful tool for times when you're doing things like sewing a buttonhole on a particularly thick fabric or in an awkward position, or perhaps you're sewing a buttonhole on some lovely outerwear and you're working with a tweedy fabric and the fabric has a tendency to catch on the feed dogs. The buttonhole stabiliser plate just helps to smooth everything out and make that process easier and give you better results. You don't have to use it though, you can sew a buttonhole without the stabiliser plate, but I'm going to show you the stabiliser plate in action. First thing we need to do is to place the button in the back of the buttonhole foot and then just slide the back of the foot down to secure it. And that, in conjunction with the buttonhole lever, tells the machine the right size buttonhole to stitch out for that button. Then I'm going to place the fabric over the buttonhole stabiliser plate and then slot the buttonhole foot over the top, and it just connects with this metal guide here. Remove the standard presser foot and then we can use our extra foot lift here to make it easier to manoeuvre the foot underneath the needle bar. Click that into place, and then we want to pass the thread through the opening at the front of the foot, and again just using that extra foot lift is really helpful for tasks like this as well. I can lift that up and it just makes it easier for me to feed that thread through the front like so. And just make sure that's not wrapped around the needle. And then the fabric, there are some markings on the buttonhole stabiliser plate, and that's really useful because you can line the edge of your fabric up with those markings, and then if you're sewing a series of buttonholes you know you're going to get them lined up perfectly in relation to the edge of the fabric. So choose which marking you want to line your fabric up with, lower the presser foot, pull down the buttonhole lever and make sure that that is all the way down, because that's what tells the foot when to change direction when you're sewing the buttonhole. Choose your buttonhole from the menu, lower your needle and just hold the thread loosely to the left, and then you can go ahead and stitch out that buttonhole. Now I can use my thread snips to snip the thread, and you can see there we've got a lovely neat buttonhole. And then on this machine I've also got the option to increase or decrease the stitch density, and I've also got the option to adjust the width of the buttonhole as well, and to do that I just use the stitch width plus or minus button in order to adjust the width. One of the great things about the Atelier 6 and 7 is that they both come with the Accufeed dual feed foot. So this is an advanced walking foot. It's a superior feed system because the feed dogs on the walking foot actually link in with the feed dogs on the machine, so that it links in perfectly and aligns perfectly. So it's superior to your standard walking foot. The other advantage to these is that you can slide the foot off the bottom. You just push it forward like so. And then you can choose alternative feet which are available to purchase separately that you can then attach to the Accufeed and sew with those. So you've got options for things like a 1/4 inch foot, a satin stitch foot, open toe, closed toe. So you can get all the benefits of that Accufeed system and that superior feeding of the fabric but whilst you're sewing different techniques. There's even a stitch in the ditch foot as well that you can attach to the bottom of this. So it really is an excellent feature of these machines and just makes feeding multiple layers of fabric through so effortless, or tricky fabrics, things like faux leather or suede, anything like that, velvet. It will give you far superior results because it will force those tricky fabrics to feed through the machine evenly. Removing and attaching the Accufeed is super easy, and when I attach the Accufeed, I'm going to refer to pushing something in at the back behind the needle bar, and this is the bit that we push in, and that then connects to the needle bar, and that's what creates the synchronization of the feed dogs on the Accufeed foot with the feed dogs on the machine, which is what makes it such a superior feed. But to remove the normal foot holder, we just undo that screw and that will come off. And then to replace it with the Accufeed, the first step is just to attach it to the needle bar in the same way as that foot holder was attached. So you can usually just about slide it over that screw. If you get the screw out far enough, like so. And just get that into position, and you'll be able to just tighten the screw with your hand, and then you can push the metal part in to connect, as I mentioned, with the needle bar. And then once you've done all of that, you can lower the foot and just tighten that screw with the screwdriver. You don't want to over tighten this though. But now you are ready to sew with that superior Accufeed foot. I thought it would be nice just to demonstrate the Accufeed in action, and not only is it great for multiple layers of fabric on things like quilts or those tricky fabrics we've talked about, it's also great for matching as well. So I've got some cotton jersey here, a stripy cotton jersey. We've all been there when you've taken the time to painstakingly match those stripes perfectly as you pin the fabric. You take it to the machine, and unfortunately the top and the bottom layers feed through unevenly, and despite all your hard work and preparation, those stripes don't match. Well, you're never going to have that problem with the Accufeed system. So let's go ahead and stitch this stripy fabric. And as I sew, I can just see and feel that fabric feeding through perfectly, the two layers together, synchronized. But the proof is in the pudding, as they say, so let's take a look now, and there we have it. Perfectly matched stripes. It's just so good being able to go to the machine with such confidence that that fabric is going to feed through beautifully. And although if you select the Accufeed function on the touch screen, the machine will limit the number of stitches you can select, you can actually sew lots of different stitches with the Accufeed. You don't have to select that option on the screen, and then it will allow you to choose alternative stitches that you would like to sew whilst the Accufeed is in position. So the one that I just had to show you is that you can sew a serpentine stitch with the Accufeed. So if you're a keen quilter, chances are you'll love the serpentine stitch, and you can sew that with the confidence that the multiple layers of your quilt are not going to move when you use the Accufeed. So let's just select that serpentine stitch now. And let's go ahead and sew with the Accufeed. And you can see there we've got that beautiful serpentine stitch, but you can imagine just having the benefits of that even feed whilst you're sewing that beautiful decorative stitch. When you do select alternative stitches to use with the Accufeed, all I would say is just choose stitches that are generally forward, that stitch forward, and they will work best with it in that mode. But yeah, look at that serpentine stitch. You can just imagine having that full confidence that you can add those decorative embellishments to your quilts without worrying about the different layers moving. Now I'm going to show you some of those lovely decorative stitches and the options that you've got there. And the first thing I want to show you is how to program a combination of stitches. So if I wanted to do that, I'm going to start off by selecting stitch number 48 in mode 2, which is a lovely heart. And if I want to program another stitch now after that, I just press the M key and then I can choose my next stitch, and I'm going to go for 53. Which is a star. Press the M key again, and that will now repeatedly sew out a heart followed by a star, by a heart, and so on. If I want to double check what I've programmed in, I can use these arrows to scroll across, and I can see I've got my star and I've got my heart. So if you were doing something like a name, you would be able to use those arrows to just scroll through and just check that you've got all the letters in the right order. And I also just want to point out that the maximum stitch width on this machine is 9mm, which is great for these lovely decorative stitches. On a lot of sewing machines, the maximum stitch width will be 7mm. The fact that this one goes up to 9 just really shows off those beautiful decorative stitches so well. So I'm going to go ahead and sew out that programme of stitches now. Now you may have noticed I pressed the target stitch when I was probably a third of the way through that final stitch, but what that will do is it will know to complete that last stitch before it secures the stitching for me. So it will, even if you press it midway through the stitch out, it will always finish that last complete pattern for you. And then I'm just going to press my scissor snips button. And I can show you that lovely combination of the heart, the star, the heart, the star. If we then want to start over, we can use the start over key and decide which stitch we want to start over from. So I might decide now that actually I want to start from the star. If I press the start over key and press it again, it will go to the star for me. And again, I pressed the target stitch button before I reached the end of the heart, but it knew to finish that last complete pattern for me. Then if you want to clear the programme that you've entered on the machine, just hold down the C button and the machine will beep and will clear that programme for you. I also want to show you the elongation key working. So this works on stitches from 85 to 98 in mode 1, and it allows you to lengthen the stitch, or elongate the stitch rather, without losing the stitch density. So it will maintain the same stitch density, but it will stitch out a longer version of the design. So let's start by stitching out the original design. So there we have the original satin stitch number 88 in mode 1. I am going to select my auto thread snips button here because I want it to automatically do that for me after I press the target stitch, and I can just show you that as well. And then I'm going to press the elongation button, and I'm going to sew level or length 3 rather. And you can see there that the threads were automatically snipped for me on autopilot. I nearly went to press the snips button, but I didn't need to. But you can see there that it's taken that design and elongated it, and that is length number 3. You've also got 2, 4 and 5, so you can really play around with it. You can take a stitch that you like and you can make it fit the relevant part on your project, and you can also alter the width and the length of the stitches if you want to. And then one of the other features we talked about earlier was the fact that you can mirror stitches. So I'm going to go ahead and show you an example of that now. So I've stitched out number 53 in menu 2, and then I'm now going to press the mirror button and stitch that same pattern again. And you can see there it's sewn the same pattern but in a mirror, so it's flipped it over, and that's great again for creating borders, for being able to put things around the edges of projects. You can just really start to customize things and get exactly the results you want on your sewing projects. I thought it would be a nice opportunity to show you one of the alphabets on the machine as well, so that you can get a feel for those letters and that monogramming feature on this machine. And you can see there I've stitched out our name, So Essential, and it's lovely and neat. I've used the capital and the lowercase letters, and you can see how you can really personalise those projects, make things really unique. It's great for gifts and things like that, to be able to put your own spin on it. Another fantastic feature of this machine is how easy it is to remove the needle plate, and this is great for 2 reasons. Number 1, not only do you get the standard needle plate included with all these fabulous markings, perfect for when you're doing things like piecing, but also for all your dressmaking needs too, but you also get a straight stitch plate included as well, and that's incredibly useful for things like sewing with very fine fabrics that might have a tendency to get pulled under the needle plate by the feed dogs. If you switch the standard needle plate out and use the straight stitch plate, which is included with the machine when you purchase it from us, that helps to eradicate that problem. Now, normally on a lot of sewing machines, you'd have to get a screwdriver and unscrew screws and wedge the needle plate off the machine. But with this particular one, if I just remove the accessory tray, you can see there's a lever here. If I push that down, you'll notice that the needle plate simply pops off for me. And you can see there that's now easy for me to remove and switch out for the alternative needle plate, or if I want to clean around the bobbin case, for example, it's just so much easier to do. And then to replace it, you just simply push it back into position and you're ready to sew again. And there are so many wonderful free accessories included with this machine when you purchase it from us, one of which is the extra large extension table. And to attach this, we just remove the accessory tray like so. This also frees up the free arm, which you can use for sewing in the round. So you can slide the hem of a sleeve over the end of the machine, for example, and it just means you're not going to catch that bottom layer of fabric as you sew. But you can also then attach the extension table, and it is an extra large extension table included with the machine when you purchase it from us, and you can just see that additional workspace that's created here, plus all that lovely space under the arm. It just makes working on those bigger projects like quilts or curtains or coats an absolute breeze. It's easy to fit the fabric under the arm of the machine, and the weight of the fabric is supported by this lovely large extended work area. You've also got markings on the extension table and on the chassis of the machine, either side of the needle plate as well as on the needle plate. So when you're doing things like quilting or piecing and you want precision and accuracy, there are so many measurements and guides to help you with that. If you want to drop the feed dogs on this machine so you can sew things like free motion embroidery, you just use this lever on the side of the machine, and if I just push that to the left, that will drop the feed dogs below the needle plate, which allows me to move the fabric freely to do free motion embroidery, which is effectively drawing with the thread. And another great thing about this particular model is that you get a darning foot included with the accessories so that you can get started with that free motion embroidery straight away. So if you're impressed with all the fantastic features on this machine and you'd like to take a closer look, just click the link to visit our website and see the full details and purchase it there. In the box you'll find everything you would expect: the detailed instruction manual, the foot control, the cover, some spare needles, bobbins, a spool pin, some spool caps, cleaning brushes, screwdrivers, all the usual bits and pieces. Plus you also get those lovely free gifts we spoke about, a knee lift so that you can raise the presser foot and keep both hands on the fabric, a spare straight stitch needle plate, and 11 different feet. So you'll get all the ones you would usually expect: a blind hem stitch foot, the standard foot, a zipper foot, an overcasting foot, but then you also get that lovely Accufeed foot that I showed you, and things like a darning foot and a 1/4 inch foot are included as well. So you get everything you need to get you started and so much more. Then, if you'd like to take your sewing even further, there is a huge range of feet and accessories available to buy separately for this machine too. So you might want to purchase something like a bias binder foot or a couching foot, or you might want to buy some of those lovely feet to work in conjunction with the Accufeed that I spoke about as well. Just click the link in the corner of the screen to view the accessories on our website. Look for Janome Accessories Category D and you'll find them all there. And if you need any help choosing, don't hesitate to contact us, because that is what we're here for. I've given you a really good overview of the Janome Atelier 6, but if I've left any of your questions unanswered, don't hesitate to get in contact. We're always happy to help. All of our machines come with a full manufacturer's warranty, so that's 2 years with this one. And in the unlikely event that you have a problem, don't hesitate to contact us. Most of the time we can resolve any issues over the phone or by email, but if that's not the case, we'll collect the machine and do everything for you. We offer the best prices, but if you do see this machine cheaper somewhere else, please get in contact with us and we'll be very happy to help. Your machine will be delivered free of charge the next working day by courier with a dedicated time slot, so you know exactly when to expect that happy post. I hope you're feeling super excited about your new machine. Thanks for watching.